Brianna, how do I lower the music? How do I lower the music? How do I lower the music? Lower it. Turn it off. Right here? Right here. We are ready to begin.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our forum today. We're so glad that you could join us. We know there are many places that you could be. So we're excited about this opportunity for you join the Black Business Forum. And right now we will have the right capital at the right time session. And so I'm Alicia Lyon. I happen to serve as Deputy Director in the Hub office. And now I will go behind the scenes so that our panelists can get started. Thank you.
I'm not sure who's supposed to be moderating. Maybe we'll get started and see who shows up. So I think we're to start with
Brittany Bennett is our moderator.
Okay. Is she
Bennett.
on?
Just 1 second, please.
I think we could start with intros while we wait for her to come on. Kenny, do you want to start?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And you're on mute.
I was having a great time just talking to myself for a second there, but it's good to be with you and so excited to be a part of the conversation today. I'm Kenny Flowers, Assistant Secretary for Rural Economic Development at the NC Department of Commerce, and I lead a team of folks that really focus on building strong partnerships with local governments and businesses to create a strong environment for economic development. And again, glad to be with you today.
And I'm Karen Levert. It's great to be with everyone. I'm a venture partner at Pappas Capital, and also I've been an entrepreneur, started a couple of innovation labs, Southeast Tech and Ventures and Ag Tech and Ventures over the last 20 years. I started my career as a programmer, working for Nationwide Insurance. They ended up moving me here to North Carolina. I fell in love with the state and decided to stay here. I'm under the Pappas Capital umbrella, but I'm starting my own venture fund focused in agriculture. Ag was one of, as Black entrepreneurs, one of the first businesses that we were in. And so I feel like I really want to make a difference there from a technology standpoint. So I'm doing it under the Pappas Capital umbrella. First, I'll have my own venture fund and we'll be focused on early stage, and look forward to chatting with you more.
And my name is David Sharp, CEO of Urban Advisors and Up Community Fund. With our Up Community Fund vehicle, which we launched 3 years ago, we've deployed over $10 million to 16 African-American owned firms. Actually, our portfolios are 100% Black-owned businesses. Proud to say that a couple of those businesses are looking at sales opportunities right now in terms of selling their business. Some are looking to refi and move to the next level. We helped to navigate a lot of those companies through COVID. and help those businesses to grow. So we're really excited about that. And our other entity, Urban Advisors, we've been doing and developing programs that have helped communities of color to develop funding programs. Detroit, New Orleans, other communities, just as an example. So I'm happy to be on this panel. And believe it or not, I've been doing this work for over 15 years, and I've never worked on a project in North Carolina outside of the Up Community Fund. And I've never got any funding from any organization within the state of North Carolina, and all of our funding has been outside of the state. So I think I can speak as a person who's experienced disparities directly within our state, and happy to be on this call.
Amir, you can go next. Your screen says my name.
Well, I'm not Brittany Bennett. Good morning. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a little technical difficulties, which is embarrassing a year into the pandemic. My name is Amir.
All right, looks like still experiencing a little technical difficulty, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Brittany Bennett Weston. I'm happy to be here with you all today to facilitate this panel discussion. I am a commercial lender. I work at Self-Help, a national CDFI credit union based here in Durham. So happy to be here with you all today. We'll wait. We'll let Amir work through his technical difficulties, but as we wait for that, I guess we'll go ahead and jump into the conversation. So glad to see all of you this morning on the screen. So I know a lot of the conversation right now about capital has been around the PPP program and all the COVID relief and the disparate access to those resources experienced by Black and other underestimated businesses. A lot of what we've heard is that either folks weren't eligible for whatever reason, or they didn't have their documentation in order. Is that consistent with what you've seen in your work to support Black and other underestimated businesses?
Yeah, so this is David. I'll jump into that question. So I'll use an example of the 16 Black-owned businesses that we had in our portfolio as it relates to COVID. We basically had to, as a team, and actually over 85% of our portfolio members did receive PPP funding in both the first round and the second round. However, we basically did a lot of the work on behalf of those companies. And so what we recognized in the process was that, one, a number of those small businesses did not have banking relationships, either at traditional banks or even at smaller regional banks. Most of our Black-owned businesses, the relationships are primarily depository, or maybe a credit card, and maybe somebody at the branch that you know. But if you're trying to get any type of financing, I found it to be quite challenging for those businesses. And if you think about it, they were going through duress in terms of just keeping the lights on with respect to their core operations. So they didn't have the extra time to figure out how the program works, put together the documentation. And so one of the things that we just recognized during that time period was that we had to step up and really help those businesses to be able to become successful. And so although we heard a lot of the stats about a lot of the small businesses that were not able to get capital, I think a lot of it was not a process that they were familiar with. There wasn't somebody that they had as a trusted person to actually help to guide them and navigate them through the process. And so a lot of those businesses just, quite frankly, missed the window of getting access to those PPP dollars.
And I'll just piggyback on what David just said, and the pike, I think, when I think about the conversations that we were having with access to the federal programs, and even now, those conversations sounded a lot like the conversations we were having before COVID. You know, some of the similar stress points in terms of access and opportunity, relationships, positioning you well to access those resources, and that some of the programs were built for speed and size. And when we think about our businesses, minority-owned businesses, small businesses, that's the opposite of what they are. So the competitiveness of it was a stress point. And I think it was also some programmatic pieces as well. The way those programs were built sometimes made it difficult for those super small businesses to even take advantage of that. When you think about sole proprietorship and folks that don't have employees that have a W-2 form, they might have a contract employee, they really couldn't access some pieces of that. So I think it was the traditional stress points plus the way some of the programming was set up that made it difficult. And that was a big part of the conversation we've been having.
And our experience was similar to Kenny's and David. So our companies that had relationships, so they were banking at a bank that was, underway with the PPP loans, no problem. The ones that didn't, that they didn't make it through on the first go round because they were trying to get everything together and understand. To Kenny's point, we did have one that had W-2 employees, but they were still paying rent and had the same pressures, and it just didn't work for them. So glad that the program was there. I think we would have gotten more Black businesses through if we had some more kind of overarching support.
What do you think that support should have looked like, or how can businesses build these relationships?
Some of what David was talking about, that sounds like they kind of rallied together. The questions weren't rocket science questions, but just to get everything together to understand really what the SBA was looking for. If you didn't have to reinvent the wheel, that would have been a good thing. And I heard Bill Bynum on the earlier panel talking about, how many loans that they facilitated, and now we know he's out there, right, for Black businesses to help them. So I don't know if he's got geographical limitations, but anyway, just, being part of the forum, I think we're learning more.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had one company in our portfolio for the second round PPP program. They had gotten a PPP from a large bank for the first round, which we helped and facilitate for them. And for the second round, it was reaching out to them saying, well, you're going to apply again. And their response was, we're super busy. We're bidding on jobs. We're trying to ramp up our next crew. I've got equipment I got to get. There was a whole laundry list of reasons why they couldn't do it, and said, hey, David, can I just hand you everything and you just do it, on our behalf? And they wanted to.
David, I think you went out for a second. May I just add that from my experience, I was able to support some PPP borrowers, and I think everything that you all are saying is spot on. I think it took a lot of support and back and forth conversations to be willing to help, point out an issue with documentation if you saw it. And, if you were going to a big bank that didn't have the time, or people who were willing to take that extra time with you, it was a very challenging experience. So you were talking some about how folks can build the relationships, but what other barriers do you think might need to be addressed in this space? Not just thinking about PPP, but more broadly, and why, or what other types of capital do you think are filling those gaps?
And I'll start, Brittany. I think one of the things that we really need to think about strongly is how we kind of network better together. I'm a big proponent of allyship, working it together, making sure that, my support system can connect with your support system to make the entire ecosystem stronger. And I think that's important. And I know that happens, but I think it needs to be more intentional from organizations that support minority businesses, the businesses themselves, and also the larger corporations. I mean, we are in a time of inclusiveness, and I think it's super important that we ensure that everyone has the information and opportunity to access, just as it is the case with communities that we work with. There's resources out there sometimes, there's organizations that can provide content and support, out there, but not knowing about it means it's not out there for you. And so I think if we can do a better job to do that together, to align, work it together, then I think that'll be a big step, and it's certainly a need as I see it.
David, do you want to finish your point?
Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know what happened with the internet. I don't know exactly where I left off, but the long story short was the small business that we were dealing with actually got $100,000 from the second round PPP. And it may sound crazy that for business to say, "Oh, I'm too busy to go after the money," but you're dealing with employees, you're dealing with contractors, you got day-to-day operations you got to manage. You don't have a CFO on your team. And so we basically function almost like an outsourced CFO across our entire portfolio. And so when you ask the question, like, what do we do for the business owners? Like, you got to be a resource there to help them navigate real time as you're going through these experiences. And when people put these programs together, again, we've been doing these programs for like years, and so we can tell you 1,000 ways to do it wrong. But they never really put money into a budget to do the support side. It's like, well, I'm providing you capital, so everything should work itself out. That's a fallacy. That isn't really true. So as long as there are supportive mechanisms to help these businesses, that's what's really needed to help them get to the next level.
Do you want to add anything to that point? And just one note for the folks behind the scenes. I did get a note from Armir that his link wasn't working, so someone might be able to help him with that. Hopefully he'll be able to join our conversation. So what do you think would be 2 key steps for businesses to be prepared and to be more to be stable, but also prepared to access these programs? I know we're talking about a lot that needs to happen on the side of the capital providers, of the lenders, of the investors. What does that look like on the business side, especially when we know that they're juggling so many different tasks?
So is the question around what businesses can do just in general to increase the probability for securing capital? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay, so I always, I know we say a lot about networking, and it's a bit of a cliche, but the businesses that are established today, a lot of them got there because they knew someone. And as Black entrepreneurs, sometimes we don't put as much value, I think, on how, and we hear this all the time, people fund people that look like them, people they know. So it's really important for us to get into those networks. And, I always say, look for someone that is in your business and has been successful in your business, and really understand how they got there and what relationships they have. And maybe that's a relationship that you need to try to have. Investors are, they're looking for all the no's. It's hard, they're more looking for ways to not invest than to invest, it feels like. And that by the percentage of folks that actually receive funding. So as much as possible, if, and I can talk more about it without taking too much time here, about best ways networks so that you can get the introductions that you need. And then we just need people that have been part of this forum that are people of color that are funders, so that we're not looking at through a traditional lens at funding entrepreneurs. So I'm sure the other guys will chime in, but we can talk more about that as well.
Oh, and I agree 100%. It is about relationships and building those relationships and leveraging those relationships together a lot of times as small businesses, as minority and women-owned businesses makes a difference. though understanding that pathway from, sitting in front of the financial institutions, agent or whomever and asking the questions and then knowing how those questions are answered behind the scenes makes a difference. And I think those relationships that we build give us a better understanding of that. One of the things I've heard very often that I smile and frown at the same time, we say that our minority businesses ask financial institutions for less than they need and then get less than they ask for. And that's a paradigm that we need to move away from. And I think understanding how those systems work better by building those relationships will be a big step towards doing that as well.
So, I know we have different types of businesses represented in the audience. So would you say it looks different for different business types, or, Kenny, from the work that you do, or what does it look like for a business in a more rural area versus someone in a more urban environment? Is the way that you go looking for capital different?
Right, and I think the challenges are institutionalized, but they're very different, in different spaces, whether that's rural, urban, or whatever. There are major differences between communities, and certainly the lending institutions in communities are different. And I think that underscores the need to be a part of that broader ecosystem. Again, if we work it together to understand what our community is, what the institutions in our community are responsive to, and work towards building that model, or a model that looks like that, I think that would be a good thing. But it's definitely something that, we see that communities that are strong, have strong, solid small business foundation with a business community that's diverse and representative of the community, creates that stronger economy locally, and certainly creates an environment where we can have broader success at the community level.
Thanks. So when we're thinking about accessing capital at the right time, the right capital at the right time, what does that look like for businesses at different stages? So a question in the chat about asking for advice for businesses that are sure it's the right time to secure capital. How would you, what kind of guidance would you provide to businesses who are thinking about the type of capital they might need?
Well, I'd like to answer that question and start with a framework. We've probably touched over a couple hundred small businesses, over the last couple of years. And the profile that I typically see is, I need money now. I'm hearing about 6 months and a year and 2 years down the road. And I had an entrepreneur tell me one day, he said, man, I can't think past Sunday. Right. So like this planning and projecting, it sounds great in theory, but it's very, very difficult to execute as an entrepreneur, and you're dealing with the day-to-day reality in front of you. And so if you think about it, some folks in financial services have been quite clever and have figured, well, I'm just going to deal with the psychology of somebody who needs a fix right now. Think about money almost like a drug, right? And so the crack cocaine is a merchant cash advance loan, right? It feels really, really good when you can get that money in the account on Thursday to meet Friday's payroll, but it's going to completely erode the value of your business and the cash flow of your business. If you're talking about a traditional lender and you've got to go through an SBA process, and you are, having to go through a channel for 6 months to 9 months to a year, you're kind of like, and it's great. You can get the money at, 0.5%. That sounds great, but you got to go through so many hoops. Most small businesses don't even stay alive long enough to get access to the capital. So you got these two wide extremes from a capital standpoint, and then you got everything in between. So you as a business owner, you've got to determine where are the sources of capital that you can go to. And I'm just going to assess this really quick. If you got a business that's growing at potential to grow at 5x to 10x over the next couple of years, venture capital makes a lot of sense. If you're building a business because you ultimately want to sell it, and you're not too concerned about having a controlling interest, you just want to get, an exit that's a multiple that's going to put some money in your pocket. Private equity could be a good route as well. If you're looking for a traditional loan, most likely it'll be less than what you need. The cost will be very attractive, but you'll have to jump through a lot of hoops. If you want a micro loan, right, something $100,000 or less, that's usually been the realm of, some online loan funds, or CDFIs now are starting to play a role within that space. They're starting to go up a little bit higher to maybe, $100,000 ish. Usually most of the CDFIs historically have done SBA lending, where they can get, a loan guarantee on the loan to you as a small business owner. And then you have what we call alternative lenders. Some are mission focused like us, meaning when we're not predatory, but we're for profit. And then you have some that are predatory, and they're trying to find a way, quite frankly, to really extract all the value out of your business. And if you think about it in a general framework, that's the universe of borrowers and business, and the universe of funders that you have access to. Now, what's going to determine whether or not you get who gets interested in you or not is, one, the quality of your paperwork. I've said this as a running joke, that the Black business owner's kryptonite is paperwork. I have seen it, like destroy so many businesses. And what I mean by that is, okay, there's a difference between someone who does your books and someone that understands finance. They're not the same, right? And so, and a lot of businesses are like, well, I'm too busy to actually have my financials done. So what happens is, when an opportunity presents itself to you, think about like an EID alone. I know businesses right now that can't get access to that because they don't have their finances together, right? They don't have the taxes in place, they don't have the financials, and they're missing out on 30-year money at 3%. And so you've got this situation where not having the paperwork in place, number one, and then number two, having a good fundamental business that people can look at and say, oh, I think there's actually a probability of this person actually making money at what they do, right? Those become two key elements to it. So I'm sorry if I went on a little bit of a extended description, but I just wanted to just put some context on the table.
No, I think that was helpful, and I think that's exactly the type of information people need to understand what all those options are. Karen, you want to talk about your experience here?
Yeah, and it would, I saw in the chat too, just about resources, and David just listed, just tremendous resources that are there. And I don't know, or the types, if there's one place, I don't know, Kenny or David, if you know where, you can go to see, okay, this is kind of where my business fits. And just to, add a little bit more to what David was saying when he talks about a 5X or 10X, just to kind of explain that a little bit more. So in the venture world, that's where I play. We talk about these multiples, and he said the word multiple. So if an investor puts $1 in and they're expecting a 5X, then they want 5 times the return on that. They put $1 in, it's a 10X, and they want 10 times the return. So to get those type of returns, typically an exit has to happen where normally it's a larger company buying your company, or you're in this IPO, initial public offering, which most small businesses don't do that. But it's really understanding where ultimately your business is going to be. If you want to pass your business on to your kids, we call that a lifestyle business. That doesn't fit the venture world. You're looking more at loans, et cetera. And with loans, they're great because you don't have to give up a percentage of your company like you do in the venture world, but there are more dollars on the venture side. So there are a lot of pros and cons, but I think mainly it's really understanding long-term where your business needs to be and what kind of capital you need to get there. And then that'll drive the type of vehicle to finance your company.
Yes,
Yeah, I was going to only say that I can just say amen to all of that. I think they touched, all of the steps that you need to, but really having a good idea of who you are as a business and where you want to be what type of load you can carry financially, or what type of load you want to carry financially, can determine, how you want to access that capital and how you build it. I think the better you understand it, the better you position yourself for success. And David said it, and this goes for businesses, it goes for companies, it goes for communities that are making application to anything. Having that solid paperwork, that solid information, that grounded information, or information that's grounded in fact, ready to go, gives you a lot of opportunities to be successful, because folks are looking for reasons to say no many times, and we don't want them to start with that.
Can I, yeah, let me,
Or go ahead, David.
Yeah.
Go
So let me give kind of a metaphor, right? I mean, I talk to grown adults and I talk to young people too. And so I'm going to try to explain this in a way, hopefully somewhat humorous, but can be relatable. Accessing capital is no different than dating, right? And so if you think about it, right, what do you find attractive in the opposite sex, as an example, right? Somebody who pays attention to details, right? I mean, like, the shoes look clean, the jeans are not dirty, right? They've taken at least enough attention to make sure that the clothes are clean, they're a little color coordinated, that they're going to make sure the belt matches the shoes, right? They got a decent haircut, right? So that they're grooming themselves, they're taking care of themselves. You don't want the person who's going to look like everybody else that's at the party, right? You want somebody who's going to stand out, who's going to be unique. So as you as a business owner, think about your business the exact same way. What is unique about your business? It could be a dry, quote unquote, boring business. You can make sandwiches, right? But you might have a special sauce from grandma from 4 generations ago that makes your sandwich taste better than everybody else's. There got to be something unique about what you're doing, how you're doing it, what your team dynamics look like, so that when you cross a funder's eye and they're seeing 20 people, there's something about what you're doing is saying, you know what, there's enough potential here that I want to spend a little bit more time getting to know this person, as opposed to me just being polite, because that happens a lot too in our business. We're polite, but we're like, I'm just, I got 10 more minutes for this conversation and I'm done. So I just want to try to be real to you folks in the audience that are business owners, to say, think about your business that way. Is it unique? Do you care enough about the way your shoes look, your shirt looks, that you got your hair cut? Translation is, don't pull up with a raggedy old truck and say that, you're in the trucking business, and you're leaving oil on the driveway when you go visit the lender. I mean, just, it's like, those are like little things, but they make a big difference to say, do you really, really care about what it is you're trying to do?
Yeah. I'd like to add a couple more. David's hitting the nail on the head. So one thing Kenny reiterated too, that David started out with, was your books. We were dealing with an early stage company not long ago, and they were using an accountant. They thought they were doing the right thing, but the accountant, the balance sheet didn't look right. I mean, I just looked at it right away. I'm like, this is how much money you have in your bank account now, and this is what your balance sheet cash says. Something's wrong. And so we got them to other accountants. So you've got to pay attention to who you're selecting, make sure they know what they're doing. In North Carolina, you don't have to be, not that you have to be a CPA, but there's some states where you have to be a CPA to be able to do financial returns. North Carolina is not like that. So you need a little diligence there. And even if you think you don't need money today, make sure your books, you have annual, statements, you're doing income taxes on your business annually, because you can't like put peanut butter back, or put, let's say, toothpaste is a better analogy, back in the tube, right? It's hard to do. So that's one thing. Secondly, as you look at funders, and David was talking about, make sure you're looking a certain way. The other thing is, you really need to understand what business they're in. Like, we only invest in ag type companies. So if you have a bowling alley and you come to me, that doesn't fit for us, right? And so it's really important to find, and now with the internet, you can see so much. You can see exactly the banks, the funds. Now, NCID, I want to do a plug for them. That's a grant funding organization here in North Carolina. They can do, $10,000 grants, up to $50,000 grants that don't have to be paid back. But you really have to understand what the profile is, what they're looking for, so that you fit that. So I just wanted to add that additional information.
Yeah, I definitely think that's right.
Brittany, if I could add, yeah, if I could add one more thing too, and I saw it pop up in the chat, and it's obvious. I mean, kids, we tell everybody we know, first impressions are the most important impressions, right? Your web presence and what that shows, because that is going to be the first thing that we look at. And a lot of times I don't think we pay enough attention to that as individuals and businesses. I've done both the wrong way before, so trust me on that one. So it really makes a difference, and I saw it pop up and wanted to just emphasize that, because I tell my daughter all the time, we're looking. You need to know exactly what you want to project, and that's super important.
Right. Yeah, I think, even in my line of work, all of what you said hits the nail on the head. Having somebody show up with I had a borrower come to me, and she had a full binder with all of her financial statements, all her tax returns, all her legal documents that we needed, compared to people have to go back and forth and hunt things down, and it takes weeks and weeks. Makes the process much smoother, I think, on both ends. So definitely understanding that and doing your research and having your paperwork in order is key. So what would what are some disruptors that you're seeing? Who's doing it well in terms of reaching Black-owned businesses? Karen, you mentioned NC Idea. What are some other examples of some really innovative and useful products that meet the specific needs of Black-owned and underestimated businesses?
And Brittany, if I can just take it in a little different direction, when I disruptors recently that have made a difference and will make a difference, when you think about the actions of this past summer, and all the things around equity and diversity and inclusion, and how that came to a boiling point, if you will, in terms of understanding and acknowledging that would need to be a part of what we do. I think it really has been a disruptor in its own right. Businesses and industry taking ownership of it, making that a box that communities have to check when they look in to consider whether or not they want to locate in a community. Is your local government responsive? Is the business community responsive? Are you inclusive, including businesses that don't look like ours, small businesses? How is that ecosystem? Is it strong? Is it in place? Do we have a support system for those companies, for those small businesses and larger companies, to make sure that we're inclusive and can be successful? You can't just wash over that anymore. And I think it's making it easier for us to have conversations that we haven't had consistently enough in the past with financial institutions, with larger corporations who can be role models, if you will, and be outreach partners, if you will, with smaller businesses. So I think that has really disrupted in a way that will make a difference. I know as it relates to economic development, communities cannot pretend that that's not an issue that they have to address if a company is looking in and considering coming there or staying there.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that in terms of a disruptor, I mean, I would say us, the Up Community Fund, we're a disruptor in the space. I mean, one of the things that your audience may not necessarily have an appreciation for is that, there aren't that many Black-owned funders, because we're small businesses too. And we've got to run a profitable business, just like the folks that we fund. And so what's good, I think, about a model like that is that our interests are aligned with the businesses that we work with. When you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out, something, we are too. And we all work in lockstep. And I think also we should be supportive of the Black businesses that are in the funding space, that are here to operate and work with us. I think it's interesting that a majority of the funders in our space, in our community, doesn't really ask this as much. So I'm just trying to raise awareness to it. Is that we've got financial institutions, we've got nonprofit lenders, which which we learned. I know I've got a person who I know who ran a nonprofit in North Carolina for a long time and got displaced, and he built it from scratch, but he didn't own it. He managed it. And so if we're creating these financial institutions, we want to make sure that there's Black ownership too, because at the end of the day, somebody's got to be able to make the decision. Well, I'm an owner here, so I can make the call on that small business owner that we can fund them, right? It's not like I'll have to ask for permission. I get to make the choice. And so you want to have more Black owned financial institutions or loan funds or intermediaries to be able to serve in that capacity. And so folks like us, we were able to do that with our fund we funded one guy who literally was a second chance guy. I mean, he had a prison record on him, but he was committed to his trade. And we were able to make the call just to say, we're willing to give this guy a chance. With 9 times out of 10, we know he wouldn't have gotten a chance, and he's doing really, really well now. And he's building a strong business. So I would say, as we're looking at disruptors, let's start to look at disruptors in our financial services space as well. Because if we're not strong, we're going to have the same conversation with the small business owners, 10 years from now, and the ecosystem still doesn't get built out.
Yeah, I echo David's comments. I did see in the chat someone asked how, to get connected. One thing is you want to be connecting with your potential funders before you need money. If you can kind of look at who could be a potential and you're talking to them without asking for money first, just building the relationship, asking for them to make introductions for you as well, that's great. And then also to kind of pile on a little bit with David saying, as we get more people of color making the decisions for entrepreneurs, it's on entrepreneurs. Like for me, if someone's had some obstacles, if it took you 6 years to get through school because you were working, that's a big plus for me, because you pushed through and you faced obstacles, you climbed over them, as opposed to, and it's, I think education's super important. We have to do it. It shows that we can check the box and complete something. Where you get that degree is less important to me. And so I think these are the things, as we come into position as funders, where we can really make a difference and pick winners based on their past of overcoming obstacles, because we know that that's the best predictor of the future.
That's good, thanks. So we are going to.
I'm sorry. Can I just add one more thing?
Sure, and then we'll go to some audience Q&A.
Yeah, sure. You were asking about disruptors, and for us as a funder, and we operate in the Southeast, right? So we're not necessarily just in North Carolina, but I'm going to throw this out to the panelists and beyond to say we need to do a better job of working together. And it's important, and for the folks in the audience, I'm just a type of dude. I just try to keep it real. I mean, I don't know how to fake very well. And so as funders, we all have our own funding programs and our own funding strategies, and we compete to some degree for business, but we should collaborate more. And the reason why is because we need to be building our own think tanks. We need to be building our own alliances so that we can aggregate and advocate for larger dollars for our organizations, so we can fund our communities at a higher level than we currently are. And I do notice that we as funders have a tendency that we operate in our own silos, right? Like, our sausage is made better than everybody else's. And so I just think that for us and you guys in the audience and the folks who pulled this panel together, I think it's great that you pull a group of funders together, but you also make sure give us opportunities, and we need to do it ourselves, but for us to collaborate together so that we can work together and not just view ourselves as competitors.
Yeah, and I think that's right on, and should be a result of this. I mean, you look at the other panels that have happened, the panelists that are here. It's on us to all get together and see what we can do differently in this space. So anyway, I totally support that.
That's a great point.
Agreed again, and just wanted to make sure that we all said that together, because it's super important. We do different things and we do it different ways, but aligning it together, leveraging the support of the business community and communities in general, because it all fits together, is certainly important. So well said, David.
Wouldn't it be great to leave this, today's Black Business Forum with, hey, I'm this kind of entrepreneur. These are the type of resources. I do this. Call Kenny for this. David's for this. Karen's for this. Melissa, Bill. I mean, it just, I think it'll be a tragedy if we don't have that. If we don't come out of this with something like that. Napoleon everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. I think a corner, I was gonna say, I think a corner of brick. I'm talking over you.
To keep David's dating analogy going, you got to do a little matchmaking here for all the
Gotcha.
resources available. Go ahead, Kenny.
Now, I was just saying that a corner of one of your earlier questions was just what Karen said, is there a place where we can go to get that type of information on what's out there, how it fits your needs? And I think something like that will be wonderful. And Karen, you said it, shame if we come out of this and don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So now I'm going to look to the Q&A for some questions here. Looks like we've had an active participant as well as some activity in the chat. So one question that came through is that in those financial services, will financial education be a focus also? I think this was in response to something you were saying, Karen, a few minutes ago. What do you know, I guess maybe even talking some about places where folks can just get some financial education to be prepared. What resources would you all recommend?
Oh, I'm one of these folks that's like, everyone should stick to their competency. So if you worry about running your business and you get someone else to do the finances, so you can understand overall what's happening financially, but someone that's their competency should be doing the books. So if the question is, who is that in North Carolina, what kind of accountants, et cetera, we should use, I mean, we can help make those connections, but you should have financial literacy. But trying to do all your books at the same time, running your business, getting the tax returns done, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like someone's put, I don't know what that is in the handgun training. That may be a joke.
All right, looks like we just got a 5-minute warning. And we were answering a lot of questions as we went. So I think we've covered a lot that's in the chat already. So folks, if you have any burning questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or in the chat. So in our last few minutes, what would be kind of a call to action for businesses? And I think we might have already said it, creating a resource for folks, but what are some action items for entrepreneurs here as they're, once they leave this discussion, what should they take from it, and how can they get prepared to tap into some different resources around capital?
I think we all need to believe. I mean, we've got the intellect, the drive, the capability to do everything anyone else does. And I always try to remind us of that. So now it's, where do we find the people that really get that, right? That are on our side. Sometimes, a lot, I mentioned I'm under Pappas Capital umbrella. Art Pappas is a white venture capital guy that's had a venture firm for 27 years. And I went to him and said, I want to have my own venture firm. And I'm doing it under that umbrella right now. And so you've got to find people like that want to help open the doors for you. And the other thing I'll say is don't get over your skis. I've done that a lot. Like, you gotta stay in, like, you can be really optimistic, but we also have to be realistic. So if you get yourself in a position where financially you lose everything or whatever, or put too much out there, and then you put other pressure on yourselves, but just be really optimistic, but also realistic.
And I agree with that. And I'll flash back when I said earlier, I think it's just really important. I mentioned allyship and working it together. I think business communities in general build a stronger ecosystem when they work together. When you do things to support me as a small business and I do something to support the business down the street from me, creating an environment where we can share information, we can leverage partnerships together. And I think there's more access that way and more responsiveness. One of the things I think financial institutions and larger businesses need to do is be proactive in their outreach to smaller businesses to help build that environment and make it stronger. So I just think that alignment, those alliances are something that's super important to any ecosystem, but especially when we talk about small and underutilized businesses.
Yeah, and I would add to that
Could
also.
you add something too about, I saw some questions about startups. Do you have any specific thoughts around startups leaving this panel? And
Yes.
whatever else we were going to add.
Yeah, startups. Yes, everyone hears that question a lot, and so I'm going to break startups into two categories. One is you have a startup that's the next Facebook, and you have a startup that is helping you to keep the lights on and feed your family and create a lifestyle. And so if it's the first one, that's the Facebook scenario, then Karen probably has tons of money for you, right? Her and her team could probably fund you and get you to IPO. If I'm making an assumption, and it could be wrong, that the person's asking about startup from the context of I'm trying to create a livelihood for myself and my family and have a business. And so in a scenario like that, most of your ability to secure the capital is going to be a function of your personal credit, right? Because you don't really have a business per se. So people are going to look into like, what is your personal credit score and your ability to get, a line of credit. Let's just say just really the line of credit may be offered to your business, but at the end of the day, you as the individual is really guaranteeing that. And so if you're in a situation where, say, you are a homeowner or you've got some form of collateral and to some extent, you can basically get a line of credit, right? If you are in a scenario where you're not creating a Facebook, you don't have the ability to get that line of credit, then you got to talk to people in your circle or outside of your circle to say, look, man, I need 50 grand, I need 100 grand, help to get me started. And for startups, it winds up falling into one of those three categories. I think there are probably other outlier options, but at the end of the day, it's going to be one of those three options. So if your startup idea is great, hey, get someone to put some money into it, 20 grand, 50 grand. You may got to give up a percentage of it, but 100% of nothing is still nothing.
Thank you. And I know there was a lot of, there were questions about how people can reach out to you all after this. Would you all mind dropping your contact information in the chat if you're willing to share? I know you all have great information to share, and this was a really wonderful discussion. I think people are leaving with some real nuggets of information to help strengthen their business and prepare to access capital, the right capital at the right time. So thank you all.
And then, in North Carolina, the small business technology development centers, those are free resources, can help with your business plans. I don't think that they, I'm going to see as well as SBTDC, free. Okay.
So thank you all so much as we prepare we're right at the hour where we're preparing to close out this great dynamic session. So we just want to thank everyone, our dynamic moderator, this wealth of knowledge from our dynamic panelists. We just can't thank you enough. And to our guests that decided of all the places to be today, they were at the Black Business Forum. And so we know there are barriers for minority firms with capital. I began to take notes from this wealth of knowledge. A few nuggets before we go. We know it's important to build relationships, leverage those relationships, which are key nuggets. Also, accessing capital is like dating. So we all know about dating. So that's just one great analogy that we'll take with us. Also, we know the common thread for this particular forum has been work together. And we have to remember to work together. So if I can just dovetail all of that information with the nuggets, to thank our moderator, to thank our panelists, to thank our guests, that we can close out. And thank you for being here as we prepare to go to our next session at 11:30, reflections and action. So I'll see you there. Thank you, everybody.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.